about an evening where a man decided to go to the movies. Chapter 1. Mr. Crane had decided that he was so tired of life that he would go see a movie in an attempt to relieve the tedium of life. But would he be successful in his quest to relieve his boredom? Well, of course he would. Mr. Crane was always successful with everything he tried because, after all, he was Mr. Crane. He got in his car, which was not starting for some strange reason. His car always started when he wanted it to. But this time the whole world seemed to want to upset him just for the fun of it. Mr. Crane, in an incredible fit of rage, stalked off to board the bus, which he hated to do because the bus smelled and had an odd people that rode on it. With a scowl, he rode the bus next to the movie theater next to an old man who talked to himself about cats and revolving doors. Needless to say, it wasn't exactly a very pleasant experience for Mr. Crane. Mr. Crane then dismounted the bus with a great sense of relief. The crazy old man started to get off with him, but Mr. Crane ran like a chicken with no head off the bus and crashed into the glass doors of the theater. With a dizzy toss of his long head, he clambered to his feet and pushed open the doors. Inside were the smells of popcorn, melting chocolate, and old people. Behind the counter stood a girl about 13 on a step stool, painting her nails with some whiteout from the local dollar store. "Good evening, ma'am. I wish to partake of a film," Mr. Crane said, reaching for his wallet. "You want a what?" The girl said in a thick accent that clearly defined where she was from. "Partake of a film," Mr. Crane repeated slowly, unsure what was going on. "What?" "Watch a movie," he shouted in exasperation, throwing his hands high in the air. Why didn't you just say so?" she said, punching buttons and taking his money. "Don't I get a ticket?" "Naw, just go in unless you want to poke around Kern or some such," she said, waving away as though she were busy, even though he was the only one in the theater. "Well, I shall," he declared, slightly upset at the rudeness of the girl who was clearly too young to work here. Mr. Crane sat in the theater thinking that he was going to watch an enjoyable movie, but something else happened. He had come to the wrong theater and had wasted his money. Indignant, he rose to his feet and stomped to the lobby where the girl sat painting her nails. "I demand a refund," Mr. Crane shouted, slamming his fist on the counter so hard that the bottle of whiteout toppled over and spilled all over the place. This was, of course, a terrible mess that needed cleaning up, but the smallish one behind the counter had no idea what to do because she was so scared about ruining her nails. So what was Mr. Crane to do? Leave the mess with no money, or stay and clean it up with the hope that the manager would come so that he could ask for a refund? Or he could just say that he was going to go get help, get the money, escape to Canada or Mexico. He'd always wanted to go to Mexico, and live there happily ever after. He might even open a Mexican orphanage and have some niños and niñas to raise. Mr. Crane had a dilemma. Agree to stay, or have to miss his film, or run for it. Mr. Crane made a run for it. You would too if you had the opportunity. In a sudden explosion of madness, he ran for the door, which was made of solid glass that had been tempered, which means that it's a lot stronger than normal, so it's hard to break. Mr. Crane hit the doors at a wild sprint, which was incredibly fast for an older man. But no matter how fast he ran, he couldn't seem to break the glass. So he grabbed a bench and tried to smash it. Mr. Crane was totally unable to break the glass with the bench, so he grabbed the popcorn machine that was so conveniently sitting there next to him. He smashed at the glass with the popcorn machine. Did it work? I don't know, was it there? He was not successful in his attempt to smash the glass with the popcorn machine. He just shattered the popcorn machine and caused popcorn to spray all over in a wild explosion of butter and corn kernels and popcorn and cat hair. Why was there cat hair? I don't know. All I heard was there was cat hair. Maybe it was a Chinese theater. It makes sense if there had been a Chinese theater since there was a great big dragon on the front. Now, we've all heard about Mr. Crane and what he did. Now let's see what the other people who were standing in the theater were thinking. "Oh my gosh, that guy's gone bonkers." Was the general feel of the people sitting there and standing there while Mr. Crane smashed the glass with his bench. Still on the subject of the people that were there, when Mr. Crane smashed the popcorn machine and the corn stuff went everywhere, a riot broke out. People were suddenly on their cell phones calling 911 and begging the police to come and take this madman away before he did something drastic, like throw popcorn at the people. The police said they would be on their way. Were they really coming? Mr. Crane was clawing at the glass like a chipmunk who ate Pop Rocks. The police rolled up in their unrealistic-looking cars, drew their weapons. Mr. Crane was unfazed and proceeded to grab the popcorn machine and smash at the glass with that. There was two of them. The police burst into the theater, waving their batons and screaming like the people in the theater. Mr. Crane heard nothing of this, of course. He was too crazy to hear anything. The police arrested him in the popcorn machine and took them to the local ward for people who suffer from things that do not bother normal people. In other words, it's the crack shack. Mr. Crane and his pop machine were admitted, but before they were allowed, the orderly said, "Oh, not him again. We were wondering where he went." That's all. What?
Why didn't you just walk out the front door instead of having
Because he was angry. You don't do things smart when you're angry. What?
That was funny.
Thank you. Alright, I'm leaving now.